Banana slam jam.
Okay, guys, I have a replay analysis to do. This is a 3.8k MMR, high BSJ. I'm a position 1 player in the EU bracket, wanting to get good at Anti-Mage. I'm an old school player, so I fuck up with Counterspell a lot of times since I'm not used to it. Got behind this game and felt like I could have bigger impact. Cool, man. We'll talk about some dotes, man. So we got reasonable starting items. Jakiro with a headdress, good to go. Against Bounty Hunter Legion. Should be a pretty good lane for you. Not the best, though. I wouldn't really pick Anti-Mage into Legion. I don't know when you picked it. Anti-Mage generally good against, like, int offlaners or... Yeah, about int offlaners. Maybe, like, a Baton or something. Or Tide. A lot of aggressive trading. I feel like if you're going to play like this, consider a salve, but since you have a headdress, it's a bit different. Like, you can kind of just continue sustaining. Good last hitting. Nothing too crazy so far. Try to use creep aggro here. I'll rewind. I'm sure you're aware of creep aggro, but right here, since you're not going for the denies, right here, you just want their objective and your objective in the lane to be separated, since you're 2v1 at the current moment because your Jakiro's pulling. So what I mean by that is he's going for these creeps, you're going for these creeps, just separate them. That's like one use of creep aggro. So like right here would have been a great time to creep aggro. But instead you walk up and get the last hit. It gave Bounty Hunter the chance to deny it. You end up getting nuked on top of the 2 creeps. You end up taking... Let's see. You end up getting ran at instead of drawing creep aggro on this one, which should have been earlier, and you would have gotten that creep. Just little things that cost you if you don't creep aggro properly. Just something to note. Oh, okay. Guy feeds. Cool, cool, cool. What are we doing for items here? We flew out a Wraith Band. Okay. We have 500 gold. What are we doing with it? Definitely really slow on the regen flying out. So right here, when you get this kill, right now, so it's really simple in Dota, right? Something happens and you address it. So, like the enemy team goes missing, you play careful. You trade for a kill, you're at like no health, you address it. Like right now, you just got to kill, buy items. I know it seems so small. I know your courier may not even be back to base yet, but right now, buy tangos and a salve, right? And it'll just make a world of difference to you if you like address a problem when you have it. But instead we end up floating like 500 gold when we're missing like a lot of health. And we end up getting basically bullied out of lane again. We do get another 2 tangos fed to us, but we really need a salve, otherwise we can't really walk up. Can't imagine how many CS has been missed in the last 2 or 3 creep waves because you haven't been topped off. So you do fly yourself a salve and you do start fighting, but then you die. Yeah, I mean, you died there because you didn't fly a salve like a minute earlier. It's really that simple. I think everything you did there was reasonable. I think in terms of, like, you probably shouldn't have blinked on him since you were so low, but you shouldn't have been low. I actually think, like, yeah, you could have adjusted better by not blinking, but I would almost rather address the problem by saying you actually played that situation well. You were just missing half your health, and so instead of taking a good trade and then having to tango up a few times, you just died. Lane's a little bit rough. I'd be using... So right now on a hero that doesn't really D-push very well, yeah, you have Jakiro, but the lane's pushing into you. The best way to D-push on a hero that doesn't D-push very well is just drag the creeps into your tower. You have to do it, meaning, like, you just don't want this catapult wave to survive long enough to then get the next creep wave, which is going to arrive in about 15 seconds. So you want these creeps to die off as soon as possible. So the whole point of lane equilibrium is to recognize when it's a looming threat, like when it's a problem, what could be done with it. Meaning, like, if it's pushing in, are you scared of them diving you? Are you scared of them taking your tower? Are you scared of them pulling the camp? If it's pushing away from you, is that good for you? Do you want to go pull the small camp? Do you want to pull the big camp? That kind of stuff. Just what does it mean for you? So, like, right now, there's a catapult. Your Jakiro's only level 2, so his D-push isn't really that great. Your best option is to drag creeps into your tower as a hero that doesn't naturally push the wave out. I also think the second point in Blink's a little weird. I would have definitely taken a second point in your mana break. It goes from 28 to 40. That's a lot. Okay. Kind of a weird lane now. Your Jakiro's been trading. I would have been telling him to be pulling. I wouldn't really be trying to fight them. Kind of benefits the Bounty Hunter and the Legion for you to be fighting them, as opposed to, like, playing a dodgy game where your Jakiro's pulling, you're farming solo underneath your tower. You seem pretty dead set on fighting them, though. I mean, you bought items to do it, and nothing wrong with your items in particular. I just think your approach to the lane could have been more geared towards, like, pushing and pulling at this point. Usually Anti-Mage on level 5 isn't that strong in lane, compared to other carries that hit, like, level 5. His levels don't scale very well in terms of his strength in the lane. So when the lane's pushing out like this and you're the one that has to pull it, so right here, you realize you don't want to be here anymore, like right here, I would have blinked to the small camp, or I would have even considered going earlier. I think pulling the large camp's vulnerable to just getting stopped, and since the lane's this far out, it's definitely not okay that the lane's this far out. You're actually trying to farm the camp, which is even worse. This is a lane where having it this far up is just not good for you, and this is what I mean by creep lane equilibrium. So having the lane this far up is just strictly way worse than having it near your tower in this particular matchup. In which case, you know, looking to pull the small camp is really important. It's worth missing a creep wave to get that small camp and get the lane fixed. Instead, you know, you end up taking a lot of trade. You get salved. So there's a lot of, like, money being spent on regen. Now you have 3 heroes bottom, and you're not actually doing anything with it. Your Pugna dies because you have 3 heroes bottom. And this is all really only happening because the lane was pushed out and you were getting bullied away. Watch Arteezy if you want to understand what I mean by pulling single camps as a carry, small camps as a carry. He does it all the time. It's where I learned it. You can watch me, I do it too, but I don't really play carry anymore. Okay, naturally it's fine to rotate away from bottom lane. It's the dead lane at this point. It's perfectly fine to, like, help your team take a tower. If the Pugna wants to stay here and take the tower, this is really the only place for you to play. You could play mid, but I actually like your support getting mid, so this is a good rotation, honestly, on Anti-Mage. You don't really want to play bottom. Supports can take mid. You can take this tower, and then this is where you want the farm. You have a hero that, like, naturally takes the tower with you, the Pugna. So this is a good rotation. In this situation, since you don't really want to confront Jug head on, the beautiful thing you can do is go pull this large camp. You should really consider this as, like, another thing of lane equilibrium at this stage in the game. It still applies. So once you see this Pugna dying, you ask yourself, like, BSJ, why are you telling him to pull the big camp? Well, let's see. No farm mid. Don't want to go bottom. Can't farm top. I'm not really that strong to jungle yet. But if I pull this lane back and this lane's up here and I have a ward that's right here and stuff, I can farm it. So that's why it's really important for you to pull this big camp. So you go to the big camp. Why not pull it? That was a crazy fucking dive though. Or a crazy blink. So, like, right after you finish this camp, it would have taken you maybe an extra 5 seconds because you pulled. But then the creep wave that's right here would have just met the other creep wave, like, right here. In which case you can farm it. And that's, like, a perfect example of utilizing creep equilibrium. Creep equilibrium applies in the laning stage, and it also applies now. This is all reasonable. I think you could have considered farming top, but I do think it's reasonable that you jungled since you're anti-mage, and you don't really do any pressure by, or, like, create any pressure by going top. That blink was really ballsy, like blinking into their jungle, not this last one. Okay. I think not going treads was, like, okay. I think the wand was bad. If you're gonna go the wand, that definitely should have just been, like, a glove of haste or nothing. If you're gonna be farming after the laning stage and you think you need a, like, the wand component, just buy a stick. Like, I literally watched Arteezy do the same thing today. I'm using Arteezy as an example because he's something you can easily access as information, and obviously he plays carry all the time. So, like, I watched him play terribly today, right? He bought a stick for the lane, and then he sells it after the laning stage. It's a perfect example of just having this 450 gold item sitting in your backpack. It could have just been 100 gold that you used on a stick to help you in the lane and then stopped. So yeah, I'm not expecting you to, like, perfectly understand whether or not you need a wand, but just consider, like, you know, am I buying this stick for the laning stage? After the laning stage, what am I doing? Is what I'm doing contesting opponent heroes? If are those opponent heroes I want a wand against? You know, like, that's the kind of stuff you need to think about. And then you can buy the wand. But in this game, clearly you don't need one, and it's obvious even more so because it's just sitting in your backpack. Even if it was in your inventory, I would think it's inefficient. Okay, so overall, pretty rough lane in terms of contesting, and you have a semi-decent timed battle fury, all things considered. But obviously not ideal. A lot of these little things like the lane equilibrium, as well as pretty much all lane equilibrium actually this game, as well as the item purchasing, has added up to a lot of inefficiency. But since then, other than that, I think you've played pretty reasonably. I think this is a reasonable fight to show up to. You saw Jug bottom. They used all their spells already. So right now, let's see what you do. Linking on a bounty hunter, okay. I've seen crazier things. So this is when it's really important to understand. You know what? Your Pugnus TPing top. I think you should have TP'd top like 15 seconds ago, but since you're Pugnus TPing now, I wouldn't TP. I think you should have TP'd a long time ago. Because that's like where you want to farm. That's the safest part of the map. We've talked about this a bajillion times on my stream. And as an anti-mage, being here is really bad. If you were going to farm, I think it's fine to farm the jungle. This is pretty nutty to me to be farming right here. They were all respawning. They could have easily been bottom with Legion. You got away with it, but farming that lane with no information as to why it was safe to do so seemed pretty crazy to me. I think you're showing up to fights a bit too much. I think that other one was fine, but I think this one you should just be in farm mode farm. You're blinking on camps incredibly aggressively, which is scaring me. I would say your farming patterns are not calculated at all. I mean, you said you're an older player, meaning like, you know, you played back in the old days, which honestly back then farming patterns weren't calculated at all. People just kind of hit creeps. Every blink you've done is kind of giving me a miniature heart attack. I don't see any information on the map that tells you you're safe to blink where you're blinking. If you just blink on 3 heroes, you're just going to die. I don't really know how to better describe this. I'm going to keep watching. We see 2 mid. I have to watch in regular speed, otherwise it's impossible to keep up with map movements.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
We see Wyvern on the ward. So the real question is, why did you blink here, right? So there's a couple things to consider. If you're trying to go bottom here, that's fine. Blink right here, rather than right here. BSJ, why? Well, you already have somebody farming the mid wave, and you just blink through vision rather than blinking the same efficiency route. BSJ, I'm tracked. I mean, you're not going to be tracked in like a second, right? So it's like, if you blink here, then they're going to see it. I'd even wait for the track to go out. I'd be like, okay, and then blink right here. And it's like such a big difference in terms of mentality of Dota that you're doing this. It may seem like such a small thing that you're showing on this creep wave, but the fact that you aren't considering that you're showing on this creep wave for no benefit, understanding that showing on creep waves means something is really important. So what that means is that if you're showing on a creep wave, that means you must be benefiting from showing on the creep wave of some way. Like, are you clearing the wave? You know, are you defending the tower? Like, you're giving away a lot of crucial information that you're showing your hero. So have it be for something worthwhile. And this is a perfect example of that. So I'm saying in the grand scheme of things, if you're going to blink, you know, think about where you're blinking on the map in terms of vision and stuff. You clearly don't think about the opponent vision or your own vision based on the blinks you've been doing to farm, so it shows there as well. So your impact in this game is getting as much fucking gold as possible so that you can show up to fights once you have mana. That's like your impact. So the problem that you're having is that naturally, the way the dead lane concept works is that fights are least likely to happen here. Forced by the opponent, I mean. Fights that are created by the opponent are least likely to happen here. Second most likely to happen here. And most likely to happen here. So, if you stay on this part of the map, the odds of you getting a fight forced by the opponent team is much lower than it is here, or it is here. And there's so much to it than that, but I don't have time in a replay analysis to describe this dead lane concept that I talk about literally every day. But the only reason you wouldn't go here is because the opponent has proven to you that there's too many dangerous heroes. So what I mean is you see a Legion Commander. So if I'm... Here's my three choices, right? Is I feel like I'm strong enough to fight, so I look to fight, which that's not the case. Or two, I think about where fights are likely to happen, and then I go somewhere else because I don't want to fight. Or three, I feel like I'm not fighting, but I'm in this farm mode where, you know, if Void Spirit's bottom, I'm scared of him, but since Legion Commander's top, I'm scared of her, which the obvious solution to that is to just hit neutral creeps for as long as you can. Those are the games that are like really hard when there's 2 or 3 heroes that represent solo kill potential, or like, you know, them plus one other hero is a lot of solo kill potential, or a lot of kill potential on you in general. Those are the games where you hit neutrals. The whole idea of neutrals is when there's nowhere else to go, you hit neutrals. So my point is that the last lane you should actually be in right now.
Mr. B.
Yoshi Gaming, stop interrupting my replay. So the point is, based on everything I've just said, the last lane you should ever be in is mid. Like, that's the lane that's likely to have things happening. You should either be jungling hyper passively because you're scared to show yourself, or you should be top, and unless there's 4 heroes top, you go bottom. Like, that's pretty much the way Dota works. If you watch really good carry players when they're playing carry and you watch their map movements, those guidelines I just gave you will dictate a large majority of what they're doing. So you should watch that, right? Like, they're thinking about where fights are going to happen. If they're likely to happen around mid and they want to potentially be able to show up to the fight, but they're content farming, they're going to farm around mid. If the fights are likely to happen around mid, but they don't want to fight, they immediately run to this lane. Like, or sorry, as Radiant, they'll run to the top lane. And there's only very few exceptions to all these rules. But you're sitting around mid, a place that fights are likely to happen, on a hero that doesn't want to fight. So you're going to be forced to fight in situations, like, you're going to be doing this, where you're like, am I not sure? Should I go to this fight? What's happening? And that's like 2-3 jungle camps that you just missed in the time that it took you to process that. And the only reason you're stuck with that awkward decision is because you're on the wrong part of the map. It really is that simple. Every time you're stuck in this what do I do scenario, you should watch the minute prior. It's the same for me. Every time I think the same thing, I'm like, fuck, I should have been bottom. Or fuck, I should have gone top. Like, it's always what you did the minute prior that led up to that decision where you're like, oh, this felt really awkward. So that's... Oh yeah, Anti-Mage ult doesn't go through BKB anymore, I forgot. So now you're in the deadline. And I think running all the way to clear this camp is really bad. Right now, I would have seen that I missed the wave, and instead of walking to this wave, guess what? That wave's going to hit tower. Guess what? That means it's going to push. Guess what? The only reason why you go bottom is to push it out and relieve pressure. So all you have to do is cut the next wave, blink into the trees, TP mid, and continue your safe farm over here. But instead, you run all the way back to clear this wave. It's just not worth it. I have no better description than that. Those 3 or 4 creeps are not worth it. It would have been so much better to clear those 4 creeps and then TP to like mid lane, clear these 3 camps and run top. It would have accomplished the same thing in terms of pushing this wave. But like right now, instead of pushing this wave, this tower should have already been getting pushed by your creeps because you would have cleared the other wave. And then what's happening mid is you pushing top. It does nothing for you to create pressure here. That's a dead lane. That's literally how it works. Nothing is accomplished by you pressuring this tier 2. It does nothing. So the point is, while this is happening mid, you want to be pressuring top, and once you've pushed it in, you then have the choice to show up to the fight or to push the tower. And at this point, you're in this super awkward scenario where, like, what do you do? Just keep hitting creeps? I guess so. So you do cut the wave, which is, like, reasonable. Now you TP top, which is really late. And all of them are mid, and your choice is to, instead of running away from them to pressure a lane, you have chose to run towards the fight before you have Manta. Notice the trend of thought process happening here? You should have been top a minute and a half ago, in which case they'd be at the tier 3, your lane, because you would have already taken the tier 2. And guess what wouldn't be happening mid? A fight that you don't want. Why is it not happening? Because you're forcing the opponent to separate. So, like, that's how split pushers work, right? Like, that's how they work. You're being efficient, you're playing by yourself, you're forcing the opponent to not do exactly this because you are not fighting them. So when it comes to understand, or you're forcing them to separate, which means they're not allowed to fight you. The point is that there's 2 ways to stop an enemy push, right? 2 ways. Directly and indirectly. Heroes like Ursa, they stop it directly. Why? Because the only thing they can do is kill people. Heroes like Anti-Mage, they stop it indirectly because they aren't capable of fighting without a Manta or this early on. I mean, this point in the game, you should have a Manta. So I don't want to say this early on in the game. They're not capable of fighting with the items you have. So the way you've positioned yourself on the map, the way you've been, like, prioritizing your pressure on specific lanes is forcing you to fight a lot. And when I say fight, that's like in quotations, fight. You've been watching a fight from point blank range with doing nothing, right? That is what you're doing. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. You know, when you were mid, you literally watched them hit each other right here, and then you ended up backing off, right? That's what you did. So the point is, this is all about your map positioning and your map farming patterns.
Don't even watch on
If
Twitch
you
anymore.
watch,
I just come back and resub every month. Thanks for the years of entertainment.
Hey man, hi Silver, dude. I appreciate that, dude. To be clear, go on my YouTube if you haven't already. Person that I'm doing, Gemgar here. And watch my Miracle replay that I did. The guy that had me analyze that replay. Because the whole game is him not able to fight the opponent and him doing what it takes to avoid those fights happening. He's playing Juggernaut, but the same principles apply.
Under attack.
So like right now, there's a Legion commander showing on the top lane. You have Manta. They are on your wards. I would be calling out guys. Like, yeah, like what I would be doing was I would be blinking towards this and farming these camps because this is a good fight. Legion commander showing top, which means she can't be there. I mean, 6-second TP on the shrine. We have 2 wards. So that's when I want to fight, but not necessarily I want to be committed to fighting. So what do? I'm going to farm near where it's good to fight. You see the difference here? Look, instead of what you're doing, which is sitting there watching a tower, I'd be farming 3 neutral camps right here, seeing if a fight occurs right here. And if it does, I show up to it. Instead, you're chasing the one hero that really threatens your hero and effectively accomplishing nothing. I would have kept that Paladin sword. Holy sh... Oh, wait, no, that wasn't your Paladin sword. That's the Juggernaut Paladin sword. Okay. So at this point, you're pretty much in a situation where you die once and the game's like nearly impossible. And it's probably pretty unreasonable for you to never die. You've lost all semblance of map control at this point. You have to play top. It's the only lane you're going to be naturally able to play. You see 3 heroes bottom, so we're going to push it. Taking the outpost. That's not a bad idea when it's 29:45. This is what you should have been doing about 15 minutes ago. And now we take a fight in our base. They overextend a bit. That's nice. Cool, cool, cool. Notice how that one started with you pressuring top and then showing up to a fight. Pretty cool concept. It's not a coincidence. You didn't even create that much pressure, but that's like the general dynamic that led to that fight happening. Every favorable engagement that you watch a player like Arteezy take is because he pushed waves and pressured in an efficient manner that led to him leading to a good fight. Okay, we get a Roche. Oh, okay, we see 3. This is pretty ballsy with those lads. This is pretty nutty. Are they actually going to let this happen? That's the real question. Oh, no, yeah, no counterspell there. That's a yikes. Finishing Roche, don't use counterspell. GG. I mean, that's like equivalent of popping a BKB against, you know, like a Tide running into the Roche pit. You just have to pop counterspell against a Wyvern walking into the Roche pit. That probably would have been a game-winning play, honestly, but I don't think the game should be one play away from winning. Or, like, one play that decides winning or losing, if avoidable. Yeah, so just a lot of little things, once again. 3.8k, so you are obviously higher efficiency than the one I just watched prior to this. But it really comes down to you're at the point in the game where your overall button pressing is pretty efficient in terms of your MMR. But the way you start playing the map is really important. And it's a process, right? It's not like somebody in 5K does this and you don't. They're just better at it than you are, but they still don't do it as well as a 6K and so forth. You know, they don't do it as 6Ks don't do it as well as 7K, and I don't do it as well as RTC. Like it's it's the perfect example. So all the things I talked about, you really need to think about the conceptual things, and you'll start to get like these subconscious triggers that you're not even like thinking about. You'll just do them. You'll see 3 heroes bottom, and you're jungling right here, and you'll immediately run to top. You take an engagement bottom, you'll push out the wave because you know your job there is to push out the wave, and then you'll immediately leave. These are the type of things that understanding what the purpose of each lane is really important. And then once you realize the purposes of the lane, you'll know why you go there, and you'll know why you don't have to be there anymore. And you'll make snap decisions to go somewhere else. And that's basically your positioning on the map caused you to show up to a lot of fights you didn't want to be at. So, yep. There we go. That's the replay analysis.